Today, we wanted to talk about the needs of the child, and I know that you're a mother, you have children, grown children, and grandchildren. So it's I wanted to kind of focus on a psychological input of what they say some of the needs of a child are, and then just really get your views on that. And one of the first things that they speak about is about the child wanting the aspect of being accepted and to be accepted and feel secure unconditionally. And how do you feel about the aspect principle of that? And not only as young children, but we're all children at heart. So is there a need for us as young children, as adults, to feel and have that feeling of acceptance and unconditional security? What do you feel?
I don't think it's possible because everybody has their own different aspects as to what is accepted.
Mm,
One child could think that cuddling them is accepted. Another child could think giving them words of affirmation is accepted. And because with our children, we don't understand their love language, that's where
mm,
we go wrong. If we understood their love language and they understood their love language as well, they knew what it was that triggered them, then we'd have
mm,
more of a fighting chance to be able to get halfway to that. But as with children, they're always evolving.
mm.
It's not possible. In my opinion, it's not possible because
Okay.
with involvement, depending on whether it's outside influences, which is generally what happens to parents, parents will bring the children up a certain way, then outside influences will change the aspect and change the child
Mm,
into either a young adult who is completely different when they come home to when they're on the street.
yeah.
When somebody else's house, they're a different person to when they're at home. You
Yeah.
see a different side to them to what other people see. It's just like when you're in a relationship with someone, your
Mm,
partner sees a different side to you than your outside family sees or your inside family sees to you because
mm,
they're more in tune with your what you've actually let them in with
mm.
yourself, your regard. And that's the
Yeah.
thing. People don't let you in. Whether it's your child or not, they don't let you in.
I hear that aspect of, you know, every child is unique, and that's
Mm,
okay. But I suppose they still could have the yearning to feel accepted. And I
mm,
can also hear the aspect of the fact that we wear different hats, is what you're saying in
mm,
essence. Do you know what I mean?
mm,
So I might have my work hat on, and
mm.
that might look totally different than my sister hat or my
Yeah.
mother hat or my wife hat. Do you
Yes.
know what I mean? Although I'm the same person, I
Mm,
show different people. And I
mm,
suppose we've got the added dynamics as Black women in
mm.
that we might have our white mask on when we're at work or in those public
Yes,
places as
yes,
well. So we're also playing those different characters. But I
yes,
suppose the core thing is that there's still an essence of us throughout. And maybe there's still a core thing of wanting to be accepted. And maybe we wear those different hats and have those different masks because we want to be accepted by those different groups.
correct. We do. And that's what children do. They want to be accepted by their parents, want to be accepted by their peers, want to be accepted by their siblings, and they wear different hats for each person. And they
Yeah,
get a level of acceptance, but it's not a full level because you can't be your true self because
yeah.
you have to wear these different hats.
Yeah, I thoroughly agree with that. I know that a lot of people, when they meet somebody, they want to give that good impression. And I think with social media, I think that's really vast. You've got this dream life that you've got on social media, the images, the photos, and it's this dream, not the bad side, but always the positive side. And you've created this character for yourself. And then you can get lost in that character and then thinking, well, does that person really like me? Or the facade that that's been created. And so I think that's something a modern situation which is increased because of social media and people portraying that role and assuming that everybody has this glamorous life where they're taking photos of their food as norm, you
I,
know.
I also think that the people who are actually making the stories are delusional because they live in this delusional world to be able to do those stories in the first place. And then
Yeah.
once they've come out of that delusional world, they sort of hit rock bottom
Hmm.
and they go back to reality.
Yeah.
And their reality can overcast that delusion. That
Mm.
delusion then now becomes their reality.
Yes.
And
And
the
then,
real
as you
world,
said, they lose themselves.
yes,
Yeah.
they lose
Yeah.
themselves, and then the real world becomes that the fake world to them, and they're trying to get out of the fake world. And if
Mm,
somebody, just one person, says one negative thing,
mm,
then the whole world can crumble. Whereas 100 people could say 100 positive things, but
mm.
because it's you're in this virtual world where nothing should be negativity, one
Mm.
comment spoils everything.
Yeah, I hear that. I hear that. But I suppose it's still again that aspect of wanting to be accepted and doing things that they think other people want to see or would like them better if they do A, B, and C. Do you know what I
Yeah,
mean? So it's still that core of
it is
feeling that need to be accepted, isn't it?
right.
And,
And
and
if
that's,
if you've got an audience on this fake platform, and you're
mm,
say 3,000 people, you're now wearing
mm,
3 different types of hats.
yeah,
Please
yeah,
everybody, but it's not going to work. One person might say, "Oh, I like that top you're wearing; it's lovely." Another person could say, "Oh, it's nice, but it doesn't fit you the right way." The other one could say,
mm,
"Oh, I had that last year." You know, there's so
mm,
many comments, so many different hats, and everybody else as well who's on that platform. They're also trying to do the same thing. So now instead of having 3,000 comments, you've got 6,000 because they've got their own comments from their own platform, and they're now
mm,
the negativity or the acceptance onto you, but don't know how to accept you because they don't
mm.
know you. They only
Yes.
know the facade of you. So they try to appease you with
Mm,
more information and more what I would class as fake worlds
yeah.
to be inclusive. It's
Mm,
like you watch some people, like I used to watch Housewives of Atlanta,
mm,
and everybody was natural when it started. Now everybody's got Botox. Everybody's got fake boobs. Everybody's got fake bums. Everybody's got fake
mm,
houses. Everybody's got fake money. It's like, oh, I've got
mm,
that. Next minute they're in foreclosure. You're like, what? My husband's great. My husband's wonderful. We're having another baby. They have the baby. Now the divorce. You're like, what?
right.
What happened?
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
everybody's seeing that hat they've put on. And the real hat that when the cameras are switched off, you're not seeing it. So you only get part of the story. I mean, one of them, she was pregnant when she got married.
Mm,
They said, "When's the baby due?" And she said, 6 months. And they looked at her
mm,
and I thought, "You look like you're 9 months. You look, ready to
yeah.
pop." What date is it exactly? She didn't know. When
Mm,
is the baby actually due? She didn't know. When you got pregnant? She didn't know. She didn't know
mm,
anything. You've been to the doctors and the chest of the baby and checked the size. Yes, they don't
mm.
know. And facade.
Facade, yeah.
Yeah.
I suppose, I mean, definitely, I think that's been seen with a lot of the Big Brother kind of viewing. Do you know what I mean? You're
Yeah.
voyeuristically looking at other people's lives, and it's quite interesting to see people that have gone through those experiences and how their lives have altered at the end of it. Do you know what I mean? Because you're right, you've got the whole world judging you based on an
Yeah.
edit. Do you know
Yes.
what I mean? Which
Yeah.
means that we know from media and other things in life that that a certain edit can make a whole difference to how it's going to be perceived, and they're
Correct.
doing it for views and to get the program to be noticed, and they're not really thinking about the life of that person left behind.
Correct.
And so
Or,
at the end of it, now they can't get employed, they
yeah.
can't get relationships.
Yeah.
There's a whole lot of
Yeah.
trauma, and that's all
It's that
forgotten before the program's
it's
finished.
that 2 minute boost, that one
Mhm.
second boost, that 1 millisecond boost that they're craving, that little bit of oh is all they want.
50 minutes of fame.
Yeah. But even the fame, even if the video, even if one person puts a positive comment on it, they've got that 1 second of oh, I feel great. And then once that deflates and it's gone, they have to do it again.
Yes, yes.
And
So, you know,
becomes
that
never
reminds
fair.
me, it reminds me of the aspects. I say the Madonna kind of syndrome, and that's where when Madonna first started, she was a bit wacky, a bit crazy, a bit edgy,
Mm,
and then she had to beat that, and then she had to beat that, and she was looking at religion and looking at things, and it kept on
mm,
getting greater and greater kind of risk taking until she was
mm,
butt naked doing porn. Do you know what I mean? And then it all kind of collapsed back down to her being, to normalizing. And so you've got to think of each time you're kind of expanding,
mm,
you're just being extra, do you know what I mean? You're just trying to be different,
mm,
and you can lose yourself in that aspect as
mm.
well.
That's the same as the circus. When the circus first came out, the circus was mediocre. You could go see animals. Then they turned it into a show. You could go and watch the show. The next thing, they started beating the animals and doing more and more tricks until, the trainer gets killed.
mm,
Pushing the animals
mm,
to a degree that they cannot stand and not supposed to be in that environment in the first place. They're in cages,
mm,
not supposed to be in cages. They're supposed to be free. They're not. They're putting on hats as well, these animals, because they don't know what to do, and then they act out on it and act in frustration. And I saw one where the tiger lunges at the glass, the little girl
yes,
sitting there, and it's the
mm,
same thing. We're all in a box, even when we're in
mm,
we're in our little box.
mm,
And that facade on children, when we send children to school, they're in a classroom, say, of 15 to 30 children. Everybody in that class has been brought up in a different way.
mm.
Everybody in that class has a different way of speaking, a different way of learning, a different everything. However, in that classroom, they're told to do everything the same.
Yeah. So do you think, well, in essence, that's another aspect of that conformity, that
Yeah,
assimilation.
yeah,
So you lose your uniqueness, and then you
yes,
become, on the factory pack really, and that's what they're
correct,
doing, that kind of
yeah,
industrialization of children. And
that's
in order to
what
be
they're doing.
accepted,
Mm,
in order to be accepted, you need to conform. So you need to
exactly.
raise your hand if you want to go to the bathroom. You need to
Yeah,
ask permission if you want to do anything. You need to be
yeah,
able to sit down for several hours and be
yeah,
quiet. Do you know what I mean? These are
yeah.
all
You have to
kind of
get
things
there
where
a certain time.
you're
You have,
losing your identity
yeah,
in order
you
to be
leave a
accepted in that
you
society.
leave a certain time, you have lunch a
Yeah.
certain time, a certain day, you sit in a
Mm,
certain places. It's all about conforming and training
mm,
the child as if they're in a concentration camp. The
yeah.
bell rings, you go to get your food. The bell rings, you go to a class. Just like animals, they train animals.
Yeah.
Ding a ling a ling, go to the class. Ding a ling,
Mm,
this what time is it? You go to that. Without those,
mm,
when you're at home, you don't have no bells ringing. Your tummy tells
mm,
you you're hungry. You go and you eat when
mm,
you're hungry. And we're training the children to eat at times when it suits the school and it suits the government, because those are the
mm.
times that we eat when we are at work.
Yeah, well, that's a very Western thing. I mean, the Rockefellers were the ones that designed that aspect of schooling to produce factory workers, not for people to use their mind and be creative. It was designed to dumb people down. Um, Originally, when people went to school, we think of Sunday school, and that's what it was. It was one day to go to school where you would learn how to read, and it was up to you to explore what you read and have that
Mm,
kind of exploration on that ground. So it was definitely designed to create factory workers, and not to create people with their own way of thinking.
correct.
Even when you do go to college or go to school, you're not even allowed to think. You have to use quotes and use other people's words, and that's all designed over whose words you can use. You
Do you
have
know?
to reach master's levels, doctor levels before you can even start to be able to think for yourself, to be
Yeah,
credible. I mean, that's
yeah.
a strange way of viewing life, but that's what we've conform to, haven't we?
But the reason why we've conformed that, I think the reason why they did that is because if they let everybody do what they wanted to do, you'd have more leaders than you would workers.
Could be, maybe, but we just have to look at what was it like. What was it like before? I think what would happen. I think you'll have a group of people who can think for themselves, not be led by the crowd. And
Yeah,
and on top of the pyramids, it was always know thyself. And I
yeah,
think that people would be able to have a voice. I mean, right now we're going through lots of trauma where you can see people there's like a cognitive dissonance where they're saying what they think people want to hear and not what they thoroughly believe in their heart, or not being able to reason what's truth and what's lies. Do you know what I mean? There's a lot of conformity that way. And maybe if people weren't institutionalized through schooling, through society, maybe they'd be able to think for themselves and make choices to say no.
definitely. Because when I was at school, they had the youth training scheme, and that was successful because that
Mm,
pushed everybody into work and pushed everybody to do something to do, challenge people into doing different avenues. You go to a
mm,
place, you work there for a while, you didn't get paid, but you were getting work experience, you were learning as you were working there. They stopped that. Now,
mm,
then, when they stopped that, that created more people who didn't have a goal, didn't have an incentive, and more manual workers, because now they've got no trade, now they've got no thoughts, now they've got no intellect into what they can do, because it's very difficult to be able to go into something if you don't know anything about it. When we
mm,
used to have people come into different schools and they used to talk to them about career, we used to have career. program.
Careers Day. Careers Day. Yeah, I remember that.
Yes, and they talk about every different aspect of jobs and roles.
Mhm,
And
mhm,
when you're you're a child growing up, the only roles you see is one, you'll see the doctor because you have to go and see the doctor, you see the nurse, you'll see the teacher. You're
mhm,
limited to who you're seeing. You're not seeing plumbers, you're not seeing carpenters, you're not seeing people like that unless they come to your house and you
mhm,
have to be there at the time. Normally, parents get things done when children are at school, so they're not
mhm,
seeing those people. They're not seeing the skilled worker, and they're not seeing
mhm.
where they can be trained to be a skilled worker.
And I suppose in a way, it's kind of like that. How do you control a nation? And if you take away those skills, I
Yeah,
mean, when I think of the older generation, think of my father, for example, he was able to do a bit of plumbing, do carpentry, do brickwork. He was actually skilled in many areas, and that gave a sense of independence because he could do the repairs around the
yeah,
house. And I think although societies push people to be in front of a computer or to do things like psychology, social work, all those kind of skills like that. But it takes away some of those practical living skills. And so having fast food restaurants or fast food, processed food takes away the skills of cooking. Having
cooking.
a calculator takes away the
Yeah,
skill of using your mind for
yeah,
calculations. Do you know what I mean?
right,
So in a way, we think things are progressing, but
yeah,
in fact, by losing those skills,
yes.
we're actually going backwards.
And even they give you money, they encourage you to take a child and put them in a nursery. They're encouraging you to do that, and they give you money and encourage you to do that. And then now someone else is looking after your child and is not teaching them the values that you would be teaching them, and they're not getting home cooked food. They can't see. I mean, as you know, mum was a foster carer, and the children thought that chips came out of a bag. They had no idea
Yeah.
what a potato was. And this
Yes.
is
Yeah.
because cooking skills are lacking in a lot of areas. Hence why, if you watch videos on YouTube and other areas, I mean, Instagram, I always wondered why I'm thinking, why am I always hungry? And I looked at my Instagram, and every time I watch my Instagram, all that comes up is food, food, food,
Yeah.
food, different recipes, different this, different that, because the skill has been lost. That there's so many videos out there now because everybody wants to learn what's been lost. When I was
Yeah.
at school, we were taught how to cook. It was basic, but
Mm,
enough. You know, you could make
mhm,
pastry, could make crumble, could make, basic things. But the
mhm,
the real um learning was how to use a knife, how to use a fork, how to use these utensils effectively, and what you could create with them if you
mhm.
had mindset to do that. And that's what's
Yeah,
happening as well with regard to the children, and their creativity is being crushed by
yeah,
computer showing everything that's already there, food
yeah,
that's already there. You're crushing their imagination and crushing their individuality on how they can produce and prepare food and season food.
yeah.
Um, you're also
It's a
crushing them.
de-skilling, isn't it? It's a de-skilling of society,
It is.
really.
And
Yeah.
ingredients, because the ingredients that they're telling you to use and the ingredients that you're able to actually purchase are not the same. I mean, the government will punish other countries by, oh, we won't use your products if you don't do this and if you don't comply with our services. So now
Yeah.
we lose out because for years, we couldn't get mangoes from Jamaica because the government decided that they were going to Jamaicans for whatever reason and whatever went wrong there. So now
Mhm,
we have to just put up with it because our government has decided that, and that's to do with some taxing. Amazon
mhm,
is great when it comes to buying things and whatever. Then we're saying, oh, they're not taxing Amazon because it's in America or whatever. And then what I've heard recently is that they're going to put the tax on part-time workers. Now, so they need to get more money in for tax because they're
mhm,
not getting enough money. But the
mhm.
people that they are taxing, the millionaires and the billionaires, they're not taxing them enough. They're only taxing the
Yeah.
small people to keep you small. You can't.
I think society is broken. I mean, it's
Yeah,
definitely broken. I mean, you're taxed, especially I mean, in England, you were taxed on everything. If you get money, you're taxed when you get your wages. If you buy something, there's tax on that. When you've given that money to the person that you bought something off, they get taxed on that money. If they put it into, if they buy something, it's taxed again. Do you know what I mean?
correct.
There's all every facet of life is definitely a challenge, and I can
Yes,
understand the aspect of if you have um, people in debt, people just functioning in order getting money in order to survive, then you can control those people. You control the people's food,
Correct.
control the people. You control the people basically. If you control their food, you
You
control the
can.
people. And on this micro level, as
Yes.
in employees,
Yes.
and on the macro level, as in countries, where you
Yes.
can control what products they produce and what products you buy from them. So
Yes.
you can say, well, produce only coffee. You can't survive on it, but I will buy it from you.
Yeah.
Then you can say, well, I'm going to give you this price, or I'm not going to buy it. And you can disturb a whole country just by having ideas like that. So it's definitely as a small, a societal thing, and a global thing when you have control over people via their food. So
Food,
yeah.
money, because you're encouraged. If you get money from benefits, you're not allowed to save the money. You have to spend it.
Mm,
You're not allowed
mm,
to save. You're not allowed to have savings. You have to spend.
mm,
If you have X amount of savings, more than 16,000, that's it. So, but
mm,
realistically, when you want to buy something, you have to save to buy. Otherwise, what are you going to do? Put yourself
yeah,
in debt. So they want
yeah.
you to be in debt because you're not allowed to save.
Yeah, and I've seen it. I've seen it with I've worked because I work in mental health, and I've had clients who have had a mental health crisis, and then have been on benefits, and then trying to go back to work. And in
Mm.
fact, it was impossible for them to go back to work because they wouldn't be in a position to earn the same amount as what they would on
Correct.
their benefits.
Yes.
And in going to work and trying to
Yeah.
have that feeling of purpose and doing of achievement.
Yeah.
So it's not what they want to do, but it meant that it cost them money in order to do it, because they would lose the housing benefit council tax, and all the kind of benefits that they would lose when they got paid. Then it didn't balance out, and so they would end up going in debt by trying
Yeah.
to be independent.
And
You
they
know,
also
it's,
lose the connection with outside people. They lose the connection that you've been taught to have when you were a child, to be with
yeah,
outside people, to connect with people. Now that you're encouraged to stay at home, or I mean, we were told for years to stay at home, and now you've got to disconnect from what you've been brought up with. And for when you were in the school system for 8 years, or how many years we're in the school system for some people,
mm,
longer for some people, it's less. However
mm,
long you're in that system, you're with other people and you're sharing with other people, but
yeah.
then it's disencouraged as you get older.
Yeah, I think definitely I believe that the true wealth of life is about connection. And
Yes,
I think we've
definitely.
been directed into looking at material things, when
Correct.
really and truly the richness is about your relationships and about
Yeah,
connection. That's the true wealth of life. It's
it
not
is.
about what car you drive, what building
No,
you're
it's not.
in, what food you eat. It's about that connection.
It
And I
is.
think, yes, during COVID, lots of people felt very isolated, and that caused a lot of trauma for
Mm.
children and for adults alike. There was a lot of trauma there. And I
Yes.
also think that it's again that feeling of where do I fit in, where do I belong, that feeling of acceptance. Do you know what I mean? That we crave all the time. And it's about, well, how do I fit in when I'm just here all by myself? Is everybody feeling this way? Is this right? Something doesn't feel wrong. And there was a lot of people that self-harmed, and a lot of people that went into a deep depression because they were isolated. And we are community beings.
Yes. And we've been taught to be community beings from birth. When we're
Yeah.
actually born, the children are put in a room with loads of other babies. And even though the babies are crying, they're still communicating with each other. You start off
Mm,
with lots of babies. You start off on your own in the womb, you and your
mm,
communicating
mm,
through other verses, through, they say, through the blood, through everything else,
yeah.
you hear the voices, and then
The
they take you.
connection.
you-
Mm,
Then all of a sudden they put you in this room with loads of babies. Now they want you to go to nursery with loads of babies, loads of children. Now you're in school with loads of it. Then as
mm,
soon as you get to work, one of the greatest things they do is isolate you and put you in a room by yourself. You're on your own. Do what you've got to do, and it just breaks the
mm,
world down. Now you've got to stay
mm.
in this job for 20 years to be able to get a benefit. And once you've got the 20 years over and done with, now you can try and get your pension. Now they're moving your pension age, and they're moving your pension age, and now you're working for 30 years, and they're moving your pension age, and then you die, so you don't get anything. And the
Yeah.
government all the money that they've saved up through your existence back into their system.
Mm, mm. The system is broken, definitely, and I think that it's
Broken
hard
for.
for us to have those connections and to have those feelings.
Mm,
And I agree. I think the focus of work is being your life. Yes, you can have those connections at work, but the aspect of working to the women now till 68 in the UK, and you're right, a lot of people are quite frail and might have ailments by that time. So when they get to the end of their work career life, then they are unable to fulfill the things that they would want to do the
Correct.
things that for to fulfill their passions. So it
Mm.
still comes back to trying to know yourself and to try to see what is really important, and is it working 40 hours, 60 hours a week? Some people are working just to make those bills.
Exactly. And
Is that
you
good for
know,
your mental health? Is that good
exactly.
for your, I mean, what are we teaching our children in that? But I suppose it's, as you said, it starts from the schooling where you were trained to be that cog in the factory. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And not
And
to
then
be creative.
you got 52 weeks in a year. And some people, the maximum they get is 4 weeks off in that 52 weeks. So you're just
Yeah,
working, working, working. So,
yeah.
and then in a country where you barely get any sun, you get a lot of rain, you get a lot of everything else but sun. How
Mm,
a person supposed to actually enjoy those parts?
Lord.
And they decide to go away. And if you're going to go away, you've only got those limited times. Within those limited times, you're lucky if you get the holiday when you want to get it, because somebody else you
Mm,
share now with everybody else. Everybody's got this 12-month calendar to work from, and
yes.
everybody on holiday at the same time. How does that work?
Mm,
And they got you in
mm,
a pigeonhole in a box. I mean, when I was working, I mean, one of the things that was said to me was, "Oh, Julian, you're a very well paid member, and you should be doing and showing an example. You should be doing more. You should be doing this because you're well paid." And
mm,
let them speak. I let my manager speak, and when she finished, I said to her, "Well, if I'm so well paid, why does the government subsidize my wages?"
mm,
I asked her
mm,
that 20 odd years ago, and she still hasn't replied.
mm,
The
mm,
government does not subsidize your wages. If you're on a good wage, they take tax and charge you more. They charge me because I was not on a good wage. They
mm.
intoxicate your brain and make you think you're on a good wage. They will have you sitting there on a wage and then bring in as somebody who's brand new, has never done the job, but has got the gift of the gab, and bring them in on more money than you. And you've been sitting there thinking, oh, that's great. And that's another thing that they do.
Yes, and they do the reverse as well. They would bring somebody in for you to train up, and so that they can have that person on a lesser wage than you and give that person more responsibility because they don't know any better. To do that on like an agency work or like newly qualified person to come in and do all that and then get rid of you. And the company saves money by
Yeah.
giving that overburdening that person, and that becomes a person's norm because they don't know any better. Do you know what I
Yes.
mean? And that increases the fibromyalgia that's been going on in society, the stress levels. This is a very stressful society. Do you know what I mean? And everybody's doing it because what you're fearful of losing your job, your need of feeling accepted. This is what has to be done. We've accepted the fact that the majority of our life is spent working for somebody else and giving to somebody else to so that you can get some money to pay for a house you're hardly in because you're out working for somebody else.
And you use a great word there, fear. We
Yeah,
fear we fear that they start us off by the parents fearing their school. We're going to send you to
mm,
hell if you don't send your child to school. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. And then they put
mm,
fear on the child. You're going to get detention because you're late. You're going to get detention because you did this. It's just
mm,
a fear factor. Or you're
yeah.
going to lose your job. So now you're afraid because you've been set up to receive this money, spend this money each month, pay your bills. Now you might lose your job. What are you going to do?
Mm. And I think it's a massive big con when you think about it. I was talking the other day and I was just thinking life and things that you need in life are actually free. Somebody's made it commercialized. So
Yes.
the sun is free, water is free, food is free, and in abundance. I was, as you can see at the back, my plants, I decided to get a Cape gooseberry, and I took the seeds out of one, and every single one of those seeds germinated, and I've got this abundance of plants. I'm thinking, well, why should anybody in life be hungry when nature, by its own design, is abundant? You
This
know,
goes to a question I asked myself as well, because I was watching this hairdresser and she kept talking about products. Stop buying cheap products, stop buying using natural things, stop doing this. You are not a cosmetologist, you are not a scientist, you are not a this. After I watched the video, I thought to myself, I mean, she sells her own products as well, and I thought, there's people who live in the jungle or other people who live off the grid and know nothing
Mm,
about our cosmetics, know nothing about our hair products, yet they still have hair and they still live a healthy life. and they've never
mm,
used anything or purchased anything for their hair. They've only
mm.
ever used plants and made things themselves, and their hair has thrived. So why
Yes.
do we have to purchase these expensive products? Because on
Mm,
the bias of the fact that a scientist has said that it's good. Scientists also said we need to have the vaccine. Scientists also said that we're going to drop down in the streets. I've never seen anybody to date
mm,
fall down from coronavirus hyphen
mm,
or what flu.
mm,
Seen it in the streets. It exists, but just not in
mm.
the way they're promoting it. And that was scientists who did that and said that. So
Well,
yes,
scientists said that cigarettes were okay at one point. Do you know what I mean?
yes,
Science and education changes. But I definitely agree
yes,
that the closer we get to nature is better. And,
yes,
and
and
and we
also
have to look at people's agenda when they make decisions and when they give advice. We have to look at who's funding that, because I think in this society, money definitely talks. And when
yes,
you find out, we had that problem with the lots of people that was doing the fact finders, and they were
yes,
saying they were giving the fact checkers, and they were going through. But then when you found out that the fact checkers were employed by the pharmaceutical companies, you're thinking, well, then you're biased. Do you know what I
right.
mean? So,
It's just
so
like
yeah.
with pregnancy, they used to say, "Oh, it's okay to drink when you were pregnant." There wasn't an issue.
Mm,
Then all of a sudden, no, you're not allowed to drink. And then it said,
mm,
"You can drink, but this amount." And then
yeah.
it just keeps changing.
It does, yes.
Just
It
changing.
changes sometimes for the positive because science learns, but also it changes because of who's funding it. Do you know what I mean? And that's the thing. Whenever
Because
you look at any kind of research, I
yeah,
know that the Heart Foundation, there was a thing with looking at vegan food and the heart, and they wanted to do the big push because a lot of people were getting heart attacks, one of the leading killers. And then, but you found out it was funded by the beef industry. And so you can see that what they were suggesting was a small amount of meat. Do you know
yeah,
what I mean? You think, well, they're not going to say take the meat off your plate totally, because that would mean sabotaging their own business.
yes.
So sometimes you've got to look at who's funding it, who's benefiting from it as well.
Because
And that's
yeah,
the problem in this society. Money is more important than health, and wealth is more
definitely.
important than people.
Because think about it, who actually needs to have a cigarette? Who actually needs to have a alcoholic drink? Nobody.
Mm,
It's
yeah.
not a need, it's a want. So why would you
Mm,
encourage anyone to do that when you're trying to bring new life or new anything into the world? These
yeah.
things, you don't need to have this. You don't need to have that. We want these things.
Mm, mm.
We should be
Well,
encouraged.
we've been told that we want
We've
it
been told,
as
yes,
well, isn't it?
yes.
And that it
And we
looks
are
cool and
marketed,
sexy. And
just
that's
like,
what they did with cigarettes, didn't they? They
yeah,
did the cigarettes was very cool. It was in the films. It was very
in the
sexy
film,
to have the
yes. Oh,
cigarettes, and
marketed
adults.
good, has his alcohol, yeah, shaken, not stirred, martini, yes. You
Yeah,
go to
yeah,
the
true.
market, all the sweeties are right by the till, all the sweeties are right on the last.
Yeah,
You're trying to get your shopping done, and your child's grabbing onto sweets at the last aisle. All the sweets are
yeah.
together in a specific area, so you can.
Mm,
It might be by something that you actually need, like the toiletries or something that you're definitely going to go down that aisle. And then when they decided that people may avoid that aisle, they put them at the tills because you have to pay at the tills.
yes,
You
yes.
don't
I
need
think
it.
there's a psychology. There's a psychology that society uses to manipulate people, and that can come in all different areas, really, isn't it?
Yeah,
And that's
but
what we need to be wised up to, some of
that's
those
it.
tricks that are
But,
being used, so that we don't fall prey to the abuse by society or by big companies, big industries
but it,
for, as you said, sweeties or
yes,
whatever product.
because think about it. It starts at school because what do they introduce when you're at school? Pudding. We don't have
Mm,
pudding at home, but you have puddings at school. They introduce sweet
mm,
items in
yeah.
your food with your food at lunchtime. You've got your dinner.
Mm,
You've got your snacks.
mm,
And they're encouraging that sweetness from men. So the
mm,
children, if you're trying to keep your
mm.
child off sugar,
It's
they're
really
already,
hard.
yeah,
It's
it's
really
going to be good
hard.
for your child when they go to school. And even
Mm,
if you give them a packed lunch or you give them a separate lunch, there's hidden sugars. Um,
mm.
they were saying like there's 10 tablespoons of sugar in tomato ketchup. You
Yeah,
can think,
yeah.
I've
Catch
never
up
seen,
is sugar.
but I've never seen it advertised anywhere where it tells you that it's 10 tablespoons of sugar in a bottle. I
Yeah,
mean, I
yeah.
see it with ketchup, but I just eat it limited now because of the 10 spoons, because I've been brought
Mm,
up with ketchup.
mm,
You can
mm,
make your own sort of sauce, which a nice spicy sauce without, 10 spoons of sugar.
mm. Or learning to make products ourselves. Do you
Yeah,
know, going back to that kind of independence. If you then you can control exactly what's in your food if we learn to do that. But I definitely understand the aspect of being socialized to have those unhealthy things, especially like processed sugar. It's so bad for us. But it's there, it's flooded in all aspects of the foods that we're eating. As you say, some things which aren't, you wouldn't think is sweet, like processed spaghetti bolognese or something, it's got sugar in it. Do you know what I mean? It's all hidden in all different places. So I definitely understand we've lost our independence in our
correct.
thinking, in our cooking, in so many different areas in our life. And then that's a controlling behavior as well, isn't it? It's controlling. And the aspect of acceptance, if you go to send your child to school with healthy food, then the child can feel like, well, I'm missing out because they've got all these treats, not realizing that these treats are designed to not to harm you now, but to give you diabetes later on, high blood pressure later on. Do you know what I mean? It's not affecting you now. Now it's pleasure. It feels pleasurable. It hits those receptors, your cocaine receptors. It feels good. But long term, you've got obesity, diabetes, kidney problems. These are what are being instilled in those types of food. And whereas the healthy food is being seen as rabbit food or something negative or something not encouraged enough.
Yes, and then the child themselves now feel ostracized from the other children because they're doing something different, and then now they can feel victimized and teased and
Mm,
not felt included because they have different foods to
yeah,
everyone else, even though their foods are healthy and it is the right way to go.
yeah,
The
yeah.
child will have that aspect and will hinder that, and then all
Mm.
of a sudden will react by rejecting the good food and want to
Yes,
have the food to
they
be
can, yeah,
inclusive
to be
in,
accepted. And
yeah,
we've
to
gone
be
full circle,
accepted.
haven't we? We've gone full circle. Again, the need to be accepted. If we kind of understand that and get and accept that, then we realize that it's hitting us at loads of different points and that it can make an effect on our judgments. So the child can make a judgment that they're going to have these unhealthy foods, unhealthy patterns, smoking, vaping, all these different unhealthy things because they this need
Peer
to be
pressure.
accepted with the peer pressure and not realize that the best way of being accepted is to accept yourself and to know yourself. And if
Correct.
you know yourself, then you'll have
Yeah,
the voice to turn around and say
exactly.
no.
So my children, when I'm talking to my children, I taught my children, and when they say certain things, or this one's got this and that one's got that, and
Mm,
they want to have that, I said, when you leave school, will you know those people that you're at school with? When you
yeah.
go to another school, will you know those people you're going to
Mm,
school with? I said, the
mm,
only person who is and will always be reliable is me. You will
yeah.
always know me. You will always see me. These people are leaves in your lives, and
Yeah.
maybe branches who may connect back with you, but none of them are tree trunks. So
Okay. That's a nice analogy.
you'll lose them along the way. So why are you upholding what they have said or believe that what they have said
Mm,
is the be all and end all when it isn't?
mm. I suppose it's an aspect of having them strong roots, to use your
Yes,
analogy. Do you know what I
you've
mean?
got
If
to
you've
have,
got those strong
yeah,
roots, and no matter what's blown in the wind or
yeah,
what season it is, you know, there might be a season where you lose your
yeah,
friends, but if you've got those
yeah,
strong roots, things will
yeah,
come back, you will regrow. So I suppose it's giving that child that foundation,
yeah,
that feeling of security and having that
yeah,
secure attachment with you. You got that secure attachment. So no
yes,
matter what's happened to them in life, they can always come back to that solid trunk, to that
correct.
solid trunk.
And as a tree
Mm,
trunk, as a mother in a tree trunk is example. And my daughter at school, and the teacher sent her home with a letter saying that she has specific dietary requirements. They don't have need, that's a need, a dietary need, and they can't facilitate her dietary need. And her dietary need was that I didn't want her to eat pork. They
and they
wanted
couldn't facilitate that?
right. And
Oh,
so
wow.
she was determined and said, my mom said I shouldn't eat pork, and I'm not going to eat pork. And
Yes.
that she was ostracized and felt a different way. And as a tree trunk, I went to the school myself and I said, why do you have to give her pork? I am telling you not to give her pork.
Mm,
Because I was a tree trunk and I went there and I told her exactly and I spoke up for her.
mhm.
It wasn't an issue. All of a sudden
Okay.
it dissolved. But as a child,
Mm,
she didn't have a voice. With her
yeah.
mother there, she all of a sudden had a voice. And she saw me
Mm.
coming. She's like, oh, mom's coming, here we go. And that's that.
Yeah.
It out. No, I do not
Mm,
want my child to eat pork. That's it.
mhm, mhm. So
Choice.
it just feels as if it's no, it's definitely that reassurance of knowing that if you've got that strong foundation, the child can build up on that, isn't it?
Right.
It seems like that strong foundation you're saying is that the greatest acceptance is that acceptance from home. And then
Yeah.
once they've got that grounding, then it can reflect on different things. So whether it's going to be school, of work,
Right.
as they grow, then
Yeah.
then they'll have that voice to say no, have that voice to disagree, to challenge, to think
Right.
for themselves. And I
And
think that
yeah.
society wants that conformity, but
Yeah.
really and truly, the strength of our community is to be able to think for ourselves and to use our own logic for what's right and what's wrong.
Correct. And then what's happened after that comes back to peer pressure. So now she's left primary school and she's gone to secondary school, and the peer pressure
Mm,
secondary school is with other children, other events. Now
mm,
you're getting a social life with these other
mm,
children. And
mm,
now with other children doing what they're doing and the school encouraging, now she wants to eat pork. And it doesn't matter what the tree trunk is no longer available. It is no longer there for assistance. It's no longer needed. Now the
mm.
pressure is, I will eat pork because my friends eat pork.
Right, right. So now that's bringing back to me at the very beginning when we talked about acceptance. You talked about the fact that that can change, and I suppose that's there. But just to hold on to you, that sometimes having that strong foundation, although they might lean away, having that foundation might come back. So I know from experience with my children, my son, I'm a bigger of repetition. Do you know what I mean? I'll repeat to the point that I'll say, what am I going to say? And the person will say, you're going to say this. Do you know what I mean? I like that. And that's something about me. And I know that for my son, it was something he said when he was younger, he found it irritating. Do you know what I mean? That me having those affirmations, in essence, he found it irritating and said that he would never do that with his children. He would never have those kind of affirmations, have those kind of link words. And then and then he said that he was speaking to his younger brother. His younger brother was misbehaving, and he was speaking to him, and he goes, Mum, I could hear myself speaking your words. I promised myself I would never do, but I could hear it. I understood, and it came out, and I was doing exactly what you were doing. You know, so for me, that holds on, that even if you've given that foundation, even if somebody moves away from it, it doesn't mean that it's lost. And you might find that that person through education will come back to that core foundation. And although she might stray away now and she's eating pork, she might get to the point where she'll say, I wonder what mum was saying, and start doing her own research
Yeah.
and realize the negative aspects of it, because you've set that foundation. Do you know what I mean? So it's not about, right now she might think, I want to be accepted by the crowd. But as she matures, she might start to make her own decisions, do her own research, and you'll see that she'll come all the way back and understand why you said not to eat it.
I wonder what mature means, because let's face it, she's 36.
Yeah. We still will. I hear you, but we're still. Do you know what I mean? We're still growing. We're still growing. Do you know what I mean?
This is
I
what I was
remember.
saying before. This is
I,
why it's difficult to accept. This is what this is my
well,
first
the core of it
for
is
evolving.
to look at mum, and like mum was a meat eater, and she'd eat meat and thought I was a bit crazy for not eating meat. Oh, you silly child, blah, blah, blah. She'd say all these different things. And then she got to the point in her ripe age, and I believe she might have been in her 50s, if not a bit older, when she stopped eating meat and now won't touch it. So I think there's never a time where you would give up on a person. There's going to be a time where people will make
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
changes. You know what I mean? And
Oh,
so I never give up
yeah.
on
As a tree
people.
trunk, you never give up. As a tree
Yeah,
trunk, you have to be there. You will always stand by what you say. And I do say the same things. They know what I'm going to say. They don't eat it in front of me. Oh,
yeah,
mum's going to say this, mum's going to say that. So they won't eat
yeah.
it in front of me or bring it towards me, because
Mm.
they know what I'm going to say. And basically, I say, if you can live your life without it, why have it? Simple.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's
Makes
important
sense
to
like
start
choices, but
pausing.
sometimes people have to go through a crisis. I've met lots of people
Yeah.
think don't listen. I say things and they don't listen at all. But when the crisis hit, all of a sudden they remember, oh, you said something about this, and come back. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
To help to resolve the
Yeah.
crisis. Prevention is better than cure,
Oh,
but
yes.
sometimes people on their journey they have to do that. You know.
Because
Well,
people, when on their journey, they like to have a quick quest. I mean, I had someone asking me about hair, and
yeah,
and I was blunt because I'd got to the point where you've had so many people, and this almost a straw on my back, And I said, I
Mm,
will tell you what to do. I will instruct you on how to do it, but I know you won't do it. You'll pick it up
mm,
for a short time and then you'll give up because everything has to be instant. It's not an instant fix. You have to repair the damage that you've done over the years. It's going to take time. And a lot
yes,
of people don't have time or the patience, because if they had the time and the patience, they wouldn't have the
mm,
issue. Place.
yes, very, very true, very, very true. But as I say, nothing's done until the time. But
Yes.
on that note, Julian, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for your insights. I've thoroughly enjoyed our conversation together. And there's a lot of info on there that we can discuss, lots of different branches that we must talk again and expand on some of those branches, especially the aspect of natural hair, which I know that you have great knowledge on and a passion from that I have. So it'd be great to speak to you soon.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's been an absolute pleasure. You take care.
Bye bye.
Bye.